You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning, it's June the 19th, and welcome to Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News. We're live here at paceradio.net and 420pace.ca. Good morning, Rev Cindy. How you doing?
Good morning, Al. I'm well. How are you?
I'm not doing too bad, Can't complain, right?
Oh,
I got the same old. Got a sore knee, all that stuff. Just waiting on some test results, but other than that, I'm doing okay. I'm watching the grass grow and not the roots, is what I always say.
Oh, that's cool. I have AstroTurf, so I can't do either.
Oh, really?
The snow melted at the end of the winter, and everybody's like looking at my lawn. It's fake.
Yeah, I guess you don't have to pick any weeds out of it either. No.
It's awesome.
There you go. Well, there you go. Well, and it's green all year.
It's green all year.
Green all year. Yeah, way to go. So anything new and exciting before we get into the show?
I spent the day at a Nordic spa yesterday, and I did my first ever going from the hot tub to a cold plunge, and it was exhilarating. I suggest everybody go do it.
Oh, no, thank you.
That was an honest reaction from Al, folks. We did not talk about this ahead of the show.
No, no.
I did it 3 times yesterday. Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
I find 85-degree water a little cool. Never mind a cold tub. So, all righty, here we go. We'll get started with today's news. First story's up.
Coming to us from Marijuana Moment. Companies challenging federal marijuana prohibition seek Supreme Court review. But will justice take the case?
Oh. Late last month, the U.S. Appeals Court rejected the arguments of state legal cannabis companies seeking to overturn federal government's long-term prohibition of cannabis, the latest blow to the high-profile lawsuit following a lower court's dismissal of the claims. But it's hardly the end for the legal challenge, which since its filing in 2023 has aimed to reverse a more fundamental Supreme Court precedent. The question now is whether the High Court will agree to hear the current case, Canna Provisions versus Bondi, and if they do, whether the industry challenge might succeed.
It's widely understood that the plaintiff's legal team, led by prestigious litigation firm Boyes, Skeller, Flexner, LLP, has long intended the matter to end up before the 9 justices. And in a recent email to Marijuana Moment, attorney Jonathan Scheller all but confirmed that's the next step. It's fair to assume, he said, that we shall seek Supreme Court review.
One sign that at least some on court might be interested in taking the appeal is a 2021 statement from Justice Clarence Thomas, issued as the court denied review of the separate dispute involving a Colorado medical cannabis dispensary. In it, Thomas discussed the landmark 2005 Supreme Court ruling Gonzalez versus Reich, wherein justices narrowly determined that the federal government could enforce prohibition against cannabis cultivation that took place wholly within California based on Congress's authority to regulate interstate commerce. It may be time, Thomas's comments seem to suggest, to revisit Reich, a move that could largely upend federal prohibition.
The statement pointed to policy developments since the earlier case was decided, such as the hands-off enforcement approach taken by the Department of Justice as more states legalized cannabis and a congressional budget rider protecting state legal medical cannabis programs. Whatever the merits of ROC when it was decided, federal policies of the past 16 years have greatly undermined its reasoning, Thomas wrote, describing the government's approach to cannabis enforcement as a half-in, half-out regime that simultaneously tolerates and forbids local use of cannabis.
Though federal law still flatly forbids the interstate possession, cultivation, or distribution of cannabis, the government post-strike has sent mixed signals on its views. The justice continued, saying the situation strains basic principles of federalism and conceals traps for the unwary. One can certainly understand why an ordinary person might think that the federal government has retreated from its once absolute ban on cannabis. That was below the line. He wrote, suggesting that a prohibition on interstate use of cultivation of cannabis may no longer be necessary or proper to support the federal government's piecemeal approach.
Okay, I found you again. My screen jumped and I lost you for half a second. The question of whether the U.S. government has authority to forbid within state cannabis activity as an extension of its power to regulate interstate commerce also sits at the center of the current case. Some experts feel the court is likely to accept plaintiff's request and seize on the opportunity to return RIC to the current era. Eric Luna, a constitutional and criminal law professor at Arizona State University, said he thinks plaintiffs, multi-state operator Verano Holdings Corporate, and the Massachusetts-based cannabis business Canna Provisions and Wiseacre Farm, along with the Trevitt CEO, Sellers, are the exact ones needed to demonstrate that RIC was wrongly decided.
They're entities that are affected by prohibition and are part of a regulated, controlled interstate scheme, he says. The reason the plaintiffs were picked is precisely because of the standing Akimbo case, the professor noted, referring to the Colorado dispensary dispute that prompted Thomas's 2023 comments. To demonstrate that, in fact, the things that were of great concern to Justice Thomas, they are in play in the Massachusetts team. Now, Luna, whose marijuana moment was referred to through the plaintiff's legal team, pointed out that Thomas is the senior justice on the Supreme Court and the only sitting justice who was present when ROC was initially decided. Sorry about that, Cindy.
Oh, no worries. I was actually just looking up another story that I'll tell you about here in a minute. Many people call it, this story made me think of something I saw last night, which I wish I had remembered before the show. Right. Many people call it the Roberts Court, just as they called it before, the Rehnquist Court, etc. He said, referring to the Chief Justice John Roberts, but it's the Thomas Court. Right? If it's the Thomas Court, in a sense, Luna continued, then I would not be surprised if Justice Thomas would see a federalism case or a structure of government cause like this as the precise mechanism by which he can show the vindication of individual rights by means of federalism and structural constraints under the Constitution.
But other observers are more skeptical the High Court will hear the case. Now, according to Robert Makos, a Vanderbilt University law professor who specializes in federalism and drug law, he says, I think the likelihood that they'll take it is extremely low. This isn't RAC, he told Marijuana Moment. This is a world apart from that. You've got companies that are selling cannabis for profit. This is commerce. If you want a vehicle of overturning RAC, this isn't it. It was very different.
Mikos and others noted that Reich centered on non-commercial cannabis activity, specifically whether the federal government could criminalize homegrown medical cannabis in California, where the medicine is legal. That could distinguish it from the current challenge. if this was the case brought by some individual who said, I just want to be allowed to grow this stuff for my own use in my backyard, you might get the Supreme Court divided, Miko said, because that's closer to Reich.
The Vanderbilt professor said justices would need to take a really extreme, long, outdated view of the Commerce Clause to come out differently in this case. There was a brief period of time where the Supreme Court disastrously said that the federal government couldn't regulate even commerce that was entirely confined within a state. But the Supreme Court rightfully jettisoned that view around the time of the New Deal. So you'd have to roll back the clock and do something that would really far-reaching ramifications.
Another professor, Douglas Berman, executive director of the Drug Enforcement and Policy Center at Ohio State University's Moritz College of Law, also doubted the case's chances of winning Supreme Court review, calling them slim to none. I throw in slim only because I don't want to be absolutely wrong, he said. You never know about this stuff, but I have a hard time thinking how you get to 4 votes for certain.
Once plaintiffs file their forthcoming petition for a writ of certiorari, it would need the votes of 4 justices to put the case before the Supreme Court. Berman told Marijuana Moment that he sees the canon provisions case as not a bad strategic choice by the industry, but also said he's long since that there were opportunities, given the uniqueness of marijuana policy in the country, to try to pioneer some new arguments outside of the case's Commerce Clause claims.
The combination of the commerce piece and the risk of dramatically restricting federal power writ large will make the more liberal justices very disinterested in taking this case, he predicted. On Ruck's way to Supreme Court, Berman noted there were separate claims under the 9th and 10th Amendments that fell out of the briefings as the case proceeded. Why not also develop arguments under other constitutional theories, he asks.
The legal team's certiorari petition in canon provisions versus Bonnie has yet to be seen, meaning it's possible plaintiffs will develop additional arguments to bolster their case. Other parties may also file friend of the court briefs with further comments about whether justices should review the matter. Luna at ASU, who has higher expectations for the challenge, said he wouldn't be surprised if the current Supreme Court is ultimately open to reconsidering nearly a century of precedent and more severely limiting the federal government's power over interstate commerce.
He pointed out that Rock ruling itself stems from a 1942 Supreme Court decision, Wickart versus Filburn, which said the federal government could regulate the personal cultivation and consumption of crops due to the aggregate effect of the activity on interstate commercial markets. To get down to the nitty-gritty, it really is a choice about how much power, given the text, context, and history of our constitutional order, we want to vest in the federal government, Luna asked.
The current political and legal climate in the country has changed in recent years, he added, which also complicates the calculus over what cases the High Court will hear. He says that we're in a new world order right now. Things have changed within the past 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. The notion that the traditional rules about what cases the Supreme Court hears will necessarily hold going forward, but I'm not sure that's true. Even yeah.
Yep, go for it.
Go ahead.
Even skeptics acknowledge that the drastically different makeup of the High Court since Ruck was decided 2 decades ago makes the matter a more open question. They said recent decisions around issues like abortion, gun rights, presidential authority demonstrate justices' willingness to reconsider long-standing precedent. Tim Swain, a Massachusetts-based partner of the cannabis-focused law firm Vincent, LLP, said he personally thinks there's a pretty decent chance the Supreme Court will deny review, but he admitted it would be hard to tell a client what to expect in the case given how much turnover there has been on the bench since Reich.
You're always going to be asked by the client, what's the chance of success, he says. In this case, if you're being honest with them, you're going to say, it's hard to predict. Regarding the canon provisions case, he says the court would essentially have to ignore the commercial nature of the activity in order to rule for the plaintiffs, which I think is not really going to be possible. It appeals on the surface like this should be something that such a conservative court would want to take on, but it doesn't have the facts that are going to allow them to get where they want the law to go.
Like other skeptics, Swain said a non-commercial plaintiff might have a better chance at winning review. If they were bringing this case on behalf of a medical-only operator, I think there would be a greater chance that this case would get cert, he said. But that's not where the market is.
Yeah, it's too bad. What everyone wants out of this case is a decision by the Supreme Court that the Federal Controlled Substances Act doesn't apply to any plant-touching company complying with state law, the attorney explained. That would be phenomenal for the industry on so many different levels. It wouldn't be nearly as important or worth the effort if the decision was limited to the medical space. Two other reasons the court may be hesitant to take the case, experts said, are the ongoing federal rescheduling review of cannabis, which is currently stalled amid a separate legal dispute, as well as the lack of any split among federal appellate courts in the Commerce Clause issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, this is still a long story.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, I was going to say it's available at our Facebook page, but I think we got the gist of it, I would say.
Absolutely.
Right?
And just while you're preparing the next story, good morning, Kent.
Good morning,
I wanted
Kent.
to share a story that I really one of us should have picked, and I'm sad that I totally forgot about it. Yesterday, at this point in time, President Trump sent in hundreds of DEA agents, police, and National Guard, 300 plus, to raid operations in California. Cannabis operations in California. They raided a cannabis grow operation in California yesterday.
Oh, I did not hear that.
Yeah, in Riverside County. I will share it with you. Maybe if we have time at the end, we can throw it in.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. We'll get a little bit more into that. That's for sure. Okay, on to the next story.
Yes, coming to us from my screen went black. Coming to us from Business of Cannabis. Aurora Cannabis faces class action over lack of warnings about cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome.
Really? When I saw that headline, I thought, what? Okay, here we go. A national class action has been brought against Aurora Cannabis in Canada, alleging that the company negligently failed to warn consumers about the risk of developing cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, CHS. On May 14th, 2025, the Ontario Superior Court of Justice certified a national class action alleging that Aurora Cannabis Inc. and Aurora Cannabis Enterprises Inc. neglectedly failed to warn consumers of the risk of developing CHS posed by the regular use of its products. Really?
Sorry, stop laughing. Got to read. The claim is being brought by Soto's class action on behalf of all customers who purchased an Aurora cannabis product between February 2015 and May of 2025 and went on to receive a diagnosis of CHS. It alleges that the company knew or should have known of the risk of CHS arising from the regular use of their cannabis products, but failed to provide any warning to consumers on prescribing physicians. CHS is usually associated with regular high-dose cannabis use, characterized by cynical bouts of severe nausea, vomiting, and abdominal pain, which can persist for several days and occurs often as once every 5 minutes. In extreme cases, CHS has been linked to fatalities.
Oh, I haven't heard of anybody who's died from it yet.
No.
Because then you could say you had a death by cannabis if someone's died by this.
Yeah, everybody that I have come across that has had CHS, as soon as I help them switch to a clean product, it goes away. So it's not the cannabis, it's the chemicals that were contained in the cannabis that weren't flushed out that was making them sick.
I know of a fellow who was hospitalized twice because when he was hospitalized the first time, they told him it was the cannabis. They had the CHS. He said, "What do you mean? I've been consuming this for years. So then, he got out of the hospital, and sure enough, he ended right back up in the hospital again. So he stopped. Yeah. Can't even do edibles. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the first honest to true case of CHS I've heard of.
He's
That's
the
very
only one that I know. Yeah, and he's a big lad too. So, all right, here you go. I'll continue with the story here. According to researchers, the exact prevalence of CHS is unclear, ranging from 350,000 in the U.S. to an extrapolated estimate of 2.75 million based on the data from the Emergency Department survey in New York City. In 2021, the U.S. Surgeon General released a statement warning of the potential risk of CHS in chronic cannabis users. According to Margaret Waddell, partner at the Sotos Class Actions, thousands of Canadian cannabis users are hospitalized and diagnosed with CHS each year. Just so you know, everybody, we do have some information on those cases later on in the show.
We know from a study that was published in 2022 that over 8,000 individuals had been hospitalized, approximately 19,000 between 2014 and 2021. Just in Ontario, she told Cannabis Health. As cannabis was legalized during the study period in 2018, and use has gone up since widespread commercialization, the authors of the study estimate a significant increase in CHS, which has been borne based upon information we have received from ER doctors. We estimate the total number of people who have suffered from CHS during the class period to be approximately 35,000 individuals. And based on Aurora's market share, we estimate that there are a range of 5,250 individuals who would qualify as class members in the claim against Aurora.
The action was commenced by a Canadian Armed Forces veteran known as VT, who was prescribed cannabis to treat medical conditions. After purchasing medical cannabis from Aurora and using it as prescribed, she said to have experienced 2 extreme bouts of nausea, vomiting, and abdominal pain, for which she was hospitalized. On a second visit to the emergency room, she was diagnosed with CHS. VT stopped consuming cannabis, the only known treatment for CHS, and is now understood to be symptom-free.
VT commenced this action to help draw awareness to the fact that consuming cannabis products can cause CHS. She does not want other people to suffer the way that she did when the CHS manifested itself. She would like to see Aurora and other cannabis producers include a warning about the risk of CHS so that consumers are properly informed about the risk, and so that if they do suffer from CHS, they will be better able to identify what has happened and know how to treat the symptoms.
According to the complainants, none of the cannabis products that were consumed contained any warnings about CHS, nor is there any warning in the product monograph or on Aurora's website. Now, Waddell says that CHS has been identified in a scientific journal since 2004, and in our opinion, the manufacturer should have known about this side effect of regular use once it was identified, and certainly by the start of the class period of this case. CHS was well recognized in the scientific community.
I have all kinds of opinions, and I've greened out. They would call this CHS. I have consumed cannabis that still, and I was part of a class action lawsuit against Metrum. Consumed cannabis that still had chemicals in it, and I had all of these symptoms. So how many of these might be CHS, or how many of these might be overconsumption or bad product?
Well, another thing I wanted to point out before we get going to finish the story is earlier they're talking about long-time consumers. People who have been using it for a long time can end up with this.
Yeah.
And now it's sort of sound like just this person's just starting. Yep. And they've got CHS. So I'm a little confused on where it's coming. Is it long-term use, short-term use?
That's where I go to they might have overconsumed that day. They might have gotten a product that wasn't completely fleshed, and they were having reactions to the chemicals. That happens with people with shatter, like with dabs and whatnot. The shatter that's made from chemicals are used to make the shatter. I've seen that. And you switch them to rosin, and all of a sudden that's gone for them. So that chemical, like the chemical consumption that's unflushed or used to make certain products, can be part of the problem. Yeah. Anyway, our opinion is that the manufacturers and distributors should have been warning customers about CHS, just as they warn about other adverse effects, so that consumers can make more informed decisions about use, continuing use, and how to respond if they develop CHS. This is thought to be the first case of its kind, but according to Waddell, it could have knock-on effects for the wider cannabis industry, including a requirement for manufacturers to provide more robust warnings. To me, this is just why not just bring back the movie Reefer Madness?
We certainly hope that the publicity from this case will lead to legislative changes requiring the risk of developing CHS to be included in the product monograph. The U.S. Surgeon General released a warning that the risk of CHS in 2021, and we would like to see more robust warnings for Canadian consumers too. It's possible that more class actions will be commenced against other cannabis manufacturers. We are certainly interested in speaking to anyone else who would be interested in starting a class action against any of the other Canadian manufacturers to discuss what is involved.
Aurora Cannabis denies all the claims made against it. A spokesperson for the company said, "It is the company's practice not to comment on legal matters beyond information that is made available to the public. Information pertaining to the mentioned class action can be attained through our standard disclosures."
Well, there you go.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's I'm when it comes to this this condition, it boggles my mind. Like, if it's for people who are consuming for a long time, how come the numbers spiked after legalization? That's where they're saying, well, all the new consumers are coming in.
Yep. Yeah.
So then is it really the product and not have anything to do whatsoever with the amount of time? Good day, Gordo. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying that the condition's not there, but I'm just, as far as it's long-time consumers, is it new consumers, or is it maybe just the product? Grow your own, right? Then you don't run into these issues.
Grow your own. Right. Learn how to spy bad product. It's all part of it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, we'll move on to the next story. Here we go.
Coming to us from Mugglehead Magazine, Josh is at it again. High Times makes a blazing comeback with new owners.
Here we go. Renowned cannabis media company High Times went quiet for more than a year due to a series of financial troubles and leadership issues. Now following a $33.5 million acquisition, the influential, long-standing publication appears to be making a fiery comeback.
On Monday, a news release revealed that Cannabis Cup contest creator has been purchased by Raw Rolling Papers founder Josh Kesselman and former co-owner Matt Stang. Raw Papers are currently the #1 seller in the United States. "I'm doing this for our community that made me," the joint paper entrepreneur said on social media on Tuesday with regard to his purchase. "The plant is the truth, and the plant will win."
He described becoming the owner as a pinch yourself sort of moment in the press release and said it was a dream come true. Here's the quote. It says, we're not just reviving High Times as a news source," Stang added. "We're positioning it as a guiding light for culture and a definite authority to all things cannabis and psychedelics."
Go ahead, Al. I got something to show you while you're reading.
Okay, Cannabis Cup's the most renowned competitions for reefer concierges of all time will be resuming in 2026. In an interview with Benzengi, Kesselman said that some of his life's greatest memories could be recollected by reminiscing about the events. He aims to make the chronic contest as glorious as they once were.
This was a
High
gift
Time.
I received about a year ago. It is the High Times 40-year history of the world's most infamous magazine.
Oh, is it? There you go.
Yeah,
I'm gonna move you over there and I can blow that up. Put it back up again. 40-year history of the world's most. There you go. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
It's pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put it back up. I'll put that back up on the screen. Oh, where did it go? There we go.
Yes. Oh, was there more?
Yes, over the years, the magazine has featured interviews with several famous musicians, actors, comedians, writers, and intellectuals.
Yes, I'm getting the story back up. I'll be right with you.
Okay, reggae music legend Bob Marley, renowned hip hop artist, and weed smoker Snoop Dogg, perpetually stone country music icon Willie Nelson, and Mary Jane singer Rick James were some of the most notable artists to have their names in the publication.
In the realm of acting and television, High Times has interviewed Joe Rogan, Canadian doobie smoker comedian Tommy Chong, talk show host Bill Maher, Woody Harrelson, and Jim Belushi. Furthermore, Molly Cyrus, Whoopi Goldberg, and Hunter S. Thompson have graced the pages in past years alongside countless photographs of cannabis plants, derivatives, cartoons, and peculiar artist content. High Times was founded in 1974 and hosted the first Canadian Cup 14 years later in Amsterdam.
Cannabis Cup.
Yes.
You said Canadian.
Oh, did I? Cannabis Cup.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Canadian. Why did I say
that? I don't normally do that, but I thought, gee, that was a little odd. Okay, we see we got some comments there. All right,
Hey,
Gordo.
Caroline.
Yeah, Gordo says all good. Hope you're both doing well. Caroline says hi, guys, and good morning. I can see it's over there on the little screen, but I can't read it over there. It's too small. Okay, so there we go.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4. We got one more story before we go to break. And I'm just clicking away here like crazy. We're heading off to New Zealand because you know what they're doing in New Zealand?
Well, we're
Cindy's
about to
gonna
find
tell
out.
you. There you go.
Yeah. Coming to us from MSN, New Zealand approves use of magic mushrooms to treat depression, but only one psychiatrist is allowed to prescribe it.
Oh, only one in the whole country? Wow. New Zealand has approved to restrict the medicinal use of psilocybin, which is found in magic mushrooms, for patients with treatment-resistant depression. David Seymour, New Zealand's Associate Minister of Health, said on Wednesday that the rules have been relaxed on the use of psilocybin in the country for the first time, but only a highly experienced psychiatrist has been allowed to prescribe it to patients.
Wow. He said the new policy is a real breakthrough. And even as the medicine remains an unapproved medicine, psilocybin remains an unapproved medicine, but a highly experienced psychiatrist has been granted authority to prescribe it to patients with treatment-resistant depression, Mr. Seymour said.
This is huge for people with depression who've tried everything else and are still suffering. If a doctor believes psilocybin can help, they should have the tools to try.
The psychiatrist, who is Cameron Lacey, who is behind the first clinical trials of psilocybin, has been identified as the only medical practitioner to prescribe the medicine. The professor at the University of Otago has previously prescribed psilocybin in clinical trials and will operate under strict reporting and record-keeping requirements, Mr. Seymour said.
Mr. Lacey told RNC that it had taken a long time, a lot of energy and perseverance to get the approval. New Zealand also announced plan to allow the use of melatonin, which is used to help with insomnia, and allow its over-the-counter sale as the policy change on psilocybin was announced. I didn't know melatonin
was illegal anywhere.
Yeah, I'm thinking, what?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, many New Zealanders have asked me why people can buy melatonin overseas, but they can't buy it from their local pharmacy. We're curious too, New Zealanders.
That's us.
MedSafe has assessed this and decided there is no reason why it shouldn't be available on pharmacy shelves right here at home, Mr. Seymour said. Psilocybin is a naturally occurring psychedelic compound found in certain species of mushrooms, commonly known as magic mushrooms, found in over 180, they now know over 220 species of fungi. These mushrooms have a long history of use in indigenous and spiritual and healing rituals in parts of Central and South America.
Studies have found that 80% of the patients who were given psilocybin experienced a drop in anxiety and depression that lasted for 6 months or more. New Zealand has become the latest country to allow the use of psilocybin.
Yeah, in 2023, Australia allowed some psychiatrists to prescribe this medicine for the treatment of certain, mental health conditions. Switzerland allowed restricted compassionate use of LSD, MDMA, and psilocybin for medical use.
In the U.S. only, Oregon, Colorado have legalized regulated therapeutic use of psilocybin, while some states allow restricted access to the medicine. The Independent is the world's most free-thinking news brand, providing... okay, there we go. That's the end of the story. Then.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, more people finding the benefits of psilocybin. Eh?
It's beautiful medicine.
It just never ends, does it?
Nope.
Keeps coming along. We keep coming up with showing more and more benefits and all that stuff. And all we can do is bring it to everybody's attention, right?
That's what we can do. And that's what we do here at Pace News.
That's right. That's right. We'll be right back. We're going to go have a joint or maybe have a puff off or vape or something. Who knows? But you're watching Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News. We're live here at paceradio.net and at 420pace.ca.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
Are you looking to get your medical cannabis grow license? Limestone City Hydroponics can help patients through the process of obtaining their license to grow medical cannabis. What's that? You don't have a doctor? If you meet the medical criteria, Limestone City Hydroponics has a nurse practitioner who can assess and provide medical cannabis prescriptions. What are you waiting for? Contact Limestone City Hydroponics at limestonecityhydroponics.ca or call them at 613-548-0420.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Rerolled Saturdays. Check it out. Nothing but non-stop cannabis and psychedelic programming. Find it at 420pace.ca.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Hey, we're back. We're live and talking about being live. Cindy mentioned that story as we got started earlier on about the raids going on in California. Because of that, we're going to make it our story here when we return from our break. So here we go.
Here we go. Coming to us from News Nation, hundreds of DEA agents, police, National Guard raid illegal CA pot farm.
So that's California, exactly. Riverside County, actually, to tell you the truth. News Nation cameras were the only ones on the ground as a massive surge of law enforcement gathered in Southern California to dismantle 3 massive illegal grow operations on federal land, and one of them stretching more than 250 acres. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration says the drug operations or the grow operations are located on federal land and not controlled, as they are operating outside of the law despite the drug's legality in California. As with many illegal grow operations, employing those with undocumented U.S. legal status is also rampant.
Ooh, crime follows crime. So in order to get these criminal grow productive, they have to reach out to undocumented workers in order to get it done, said DEA agent Anthony Chrysanthus. So we are anticipating there being some undocumented workers on scene. We have plenty of resources here available to interview them, find out their story, find out how they got here, and see how they were trafficked, and then pass those leads on. California, an exclusive multiple arrests made as 3 illegal cannabis grow operations are dismantled in Riverside County. Agents, officers, and soldiers went in 500. I thought it was 500 strong to thwart the illegal activity, which included the employment of illegal immigrants.
Yeah, our reception's a little choppy there, and we're going a little off on that, but just so you know. Now, where are we here? Multiple arrests have been made, 3 illegals. Okay, just about every federal agency was on the scene, and the DEA says it's the largest law enforcement collaboration in recent history in the region, with upwards of 500 agents and officers and soldiers, 325 of them from the California National Guard, and roughly 100 armored vehicles were also involved in the operation. So lots going on there.
Wow.
Now, I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, big raids going on. So they're picking up. They're looking for people who are in the country illegally. So that's the ICE guys, and they're in there going at the cannabis operation as well.
Yeah, craziness. Yeah. So this went down, I guess, yesterday morning.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. All right. I'm going to get the next one's all lined up, ready to go, as well as the headline. So here we go.
Here we go. Coming to us from CPR News, Polis announces mass pardon for previous psilocybin and psilocin convictions.
All right. Good news then. Governor Jared Polis says he will pardon people who were convicted of state crimes related to psilocybin and psilocin, and the move is similar to mass pardons of cannabis convictions in 2020. The announcement came during the remarks at the 2025 Psychedelic Science Conference in Denver on Wednesday. Cindy, I'll be right back. You keep going. Okay.
Sure. These pardons are an important step forward for the individuals who now have this cleared from the record, Polis said during his remarks, but also to really acknowledge the error in public policy that led to their conviction, creating a more just system to break down barriers and help them move on with their lives. Polis acknowledged the pardon would include only a handful of psilocybin possession convictions at the state level, but he will encourage local jurisdictions to follow suit. Noting most convictions came at the local level.
I am granting full and unconditional pardons for state convictions of possession of psilocybin and psilocin for those 21 years of age or older at the time of the offense, because possession of psilocybin and psilocin is no longer illegal in the state of Colorado, and it should not be held against people since it's not a crime, Polis said in an executive order earlier this month. The governor signed SB 25297, which gave him the power to grant this type of pardon. Voters passed a ballot initiative to decriminalize the psychoactive compound found in psychedelic mushrooms in November of 2022. Part of the law allowed for the creation of a state-licensed psilocybin therapy. Those policies took effect earlier this year with healing centers opening around the state. Colorado and Oregon remain the only two states to legalize psilocybin.
I am excited about what lies ahead, about the data, the science, the benefits, the risks, learning about how these natural medicines can help people, whether it's an addiction recovery, whether it's PSD, Polis said. You know, these are real issues and challenges that we face, not just in Colorado, across the country and across the world. The executive order also noted that if a Coloradian was not pardoned and believes they should be, they can apply for clemency through the Colorado Bureau of Investigation.
There you go. Good to hear people getting pardons for, and one of them just to be just like the cannabis people, patients. Right?
Yeah. I think it's beautiful to see. It's definitely steps forward, and it gives hope for the future and lifting the ban on all of these medicines and doing the same thing for them as well. It's really exciting. I mean, the fight for cannabis has stretched, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, here we go. Talking about stretching and getting really high.
Yeah, coming to us from International Cannabis Business Conference. International researchers to send cannabis seeds into space.
Getting real high. After decades of cannabis research being greatly hindered, if not outright prevented, due to the cannabis prohibition policies, the rate and scope of research around the world are increasing. The great example of this can be found in an international research project that involves sending cannabis seeds into space. On June the 20th, which is tomorrow, we're sending plant life beyond Earth's atmosphere to explore how it evolves in zero gravity. Researchers affiliated with the project titled Martian Grow wrote in a recent post on LinkedIn, "From Vandenberg to the stars, this is where cannabis research meets deep space."
For too long, discovery has been confined to sterile labs and guarded by gatekeepers. But innovation has always thrived where curiosity is free. This project is a call to action, an open experiment driven not by profit, but by the boundless potential of human creativity. The researchers state on the project's website, "We are not funded by big pharma or controlled by financial interests. We are fueled by the desire to explore, to question, and to unlock knowledge that belongs to everyone." The research project will be organized into a 3-part action plan, and people around the world are encouraged to follow along on X, Facebook, and Instagram, in addition to signing up for email alerts via the project's website.
Yeah. The researchers stated that we launch cannabis seeds into space, exposing them to cosmic radiation and microgravity. This helps us study mutations and adaptations that could improve plant resilience, disease resistance, and genetic robustness, offering new insights into cannabis genetics and its potential for agricultural advancements beyond Earth. The researchers stated about the first step of the project action plan. It says, "We create Martian soil conditions on Earth, testing fertilizers and nutrients to optimize plant survival. By studying how cannabis interacts with simulated Martian soil, we gain crucial insights into its adaptability, genetic expression, and potential for sustaining future extraterrestrial agriculture." ET food.
Wow. By cultivating cannabis clones in controlled low-gravity environments, we analyze root development, biomass production, and genetic changes. This research helps us understand how plants adapt beyond Earth while expanding our knowledge of cannabis biology at a molecular level. They conclude about the final steps of their action plan. Per the LinkedIn post embedded earlier in this article, the seeds are set to launch on Friday, June 20th, 2025. Per my communications with one of the land researchers on the project, Slovenian scientist, that gentleman, the seeds are expected to be in an orbit for 5 to 6 hours before coming back to Earth. Okay, well, I've already clicked on the Facebook link and followed them, so I can't wait.
Yeah, I know, but I guess the question I got though is they're only going to go up there for 5 or 6 hours, so it's not as if they're going to be up there be planted and growing.
No, but they're sending them out to see how
Yeah.
the zero gravity and whatnot. I would assume that this will eventually, I'm hoping, not assuming, I'm hoping that this will eventually lead to maybe sticking them up there on the moon or on this
Well,
place
Martian
or that
soil.
place, right? In real Martian soil. And then, let's use our little telescopes and watch them grow and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Really cool. I
The
never even thought of it. Love the mind of a stoner. Amazing.
All right, we got 2 more stories to cover. We got 10 minutes to see if we can get her done.
Okay,
Here we
dokie.
go. Next one's up.
Coming to us once again from MSN. Study links psychedelic use in illegal settings to increase psychotic and manic symptoms.
A new longitudinal study has found that people who use psychedelics in illegal contexts may experience an increase in psychotic and manic symptoms. These effects were not seen in people who use psychedelics in legal permitted settings. I wonder if it's because it's illegal and the person's got anxiety because of what they're doing.
I think it's set in setting because you're more panicked in an illegal, etc.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it has to do with set and setting and being relaxed, I think.
Yeah. The study also found that individuals with a personal history of schizophrenia or bipolar 1 disorder were especially likely to report worsening manic symptoms after psychedelic use, and those findings were in the Journal of Psychological Medicine. Now, clinical trials have shown that psychedelics, when paired with therapy and administered under strict protocols, can help treat depression, anxiety, and other mental health conditions. But these trials usually exclude participants with a personal or family history of psychotic disorder or bipolar 1 disorder due to the concerns that psychedelics could worsen symptoms in these populations. As the use of psychedelics becomes more widespread, particularly in settings outside of medical supervisions, the risks of vulnerable groups are not well understood.
We know very little about the risk of psychotic or manic episodes following naturalistic psychedelic use, particularly for individuals typically excluded from participation in clinical trials. That's why it's so important to investigate this further, said study author Otto Simonson, who is a postdoctoral research at the Karolinska Institute's Department of Clinical Neuroscience. To investigate this issue, researchers used a longitudinal design and surveyed more than 21,000 people in the United States between the ages of 18 and 50. The study began in 2023 and continued through 2024. Participants were recruited online and asked to complete a baseline survey and a follow-up survey about 2 months later. Of the original sample, over 12,000 participants completed the follow-up. During that time, about 500 participants reported using psychedelics.
Participants answered a range of questions about their use of substances, mental health history, and recent psychological symptoms. Those who used psychedelics during the study period reported how often they used them, which specific substances were taken, and the contexts in which they were used. The researchers distinguished between psychedelic use that occurred in illegal settings versus use in locations where the substances were decriminalized or permitted. Participants who used psychedelics also completed additional surveys about the quality of their most intense experience during the 2-month window, including whether they had psychologically difficult experiences or felt they gained insight during the trip. Mental health symptoms were measured at both time points. Participants completed questionnaires assessing psychotic symptoms such as hallucinations and delusional thoughts, as well as symptoms of manic such as elevated mood, racing thoughts, and increased activity. The study also collected detailed information on participants' psychiatric history, including whether they had been diagnosed with conditions such as schizophrenia or bipolar 1 disease or disorder, or any family members with these diagnoses.
The results showed that the psychedelic use was associated with an increase in both psychotic and manic symptoms over the study period. However, this association was only observed among people who use psychedelics in illegal contexts. Those who use psychedelics in decriminalized or legal settings did not show similar increases. Nearly all the people in the sample who reported psychedelic use, especially those with a history of schizophrenia or bipolar 1 disorders, had used them in illegal contexts. The increase in psychotic symptoms appeared to be stronger among people who use psychedelics more frequently and among those who reported more physiological difficult experiences during their trips. For example, psychological difficulties during experience. For example, feelings of fear, confusion, or paranoia during the experience were linked to more psychotic symptoms later on. In contrast, the increase in manic symptoms was most pronounced among people with a personal history of schizophrenia or bipolar 1 disorder, and among those who reported experiencing deep insights during their psychedelic trips.
Yeah, the researchers also found some indication that other psychiatric histories may increase sensitivity to psychedelics. For instance, people with schizotypal personality disorder who use psychedelics reported greater increases in manic symptoms. These findings suggest that genetic or psychological factors related to certain disorders might heighten the risk of adverse outcomes following psychedelic use. One possible reason why illegal contents were associated with worse outcomes is that these settings may be less safe or predictable. Participants who use psychedelics in illegal environments were more likely to report negative mindsets prior to the experience or lack of psychological support during it. Stressful surroundings or uncertainty about the content and dosage of the medicine could also contribute to challenging experiences. These factors may amplify the effects of the medicine in ways that increase vulnerability to psychotic or manic episodes.
The relationship between naturalistic psychedelic use and psychotic or manic symptoms is intricate and likely influenced by factors such as legal context, frequency of use, the acute psychedelic experience, and psychiatric history. Interestingly, the study did not find an association between psychedelic use and worsening psychotic symptoms among people with a personal history of schizophrenia or bipolar 1 disorder. This finding contrasts with earlier concerns that psychedelic use in these populations could trigger psychosis. However, the number of participants in the study with these specific diagnoses was small. Only 4 people with schizophrenia and 22 with bipolar 1 disorder reported using psychedelics during the study period. So conclusions should be made cautiously. We're not really learning about what psychedelics were used either, were we?
No, we're not. And I'm looking at the time, and that story is only halfway done. So,
yeah.
But we got the gist of everything. I would say.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and we'll move on to this last story, which I had promised everybody earlier. So I wanted to make sure I got it in right. Okay, here we go. It's up and ready to go.
Coming to us from StratCan, reviewing trends in cannabis-related hospitalizations and emergency department visits in Canada.
Yes, exactly. The study, based on existing literature over a 14-year period, shows steady annual increases in both categories, highlighting the impact cannabis use has on Canada's public health system and the need for continued ongoing monitoring of such trends. And I think I might have jumped ahead a little bit. This is a recent published study with the Public Health Agency of Canada document trends in cannabis habitude hospitalization and emergency department visits in Canada from 2007 to 2020. So it's a 14 years.
Yeah. This study was based on the ongoing Canadian Substance Use Costs and Harms project, which estimates costs and harms dating back to 2007 across a range of substances and outcomes. While extrapolating the data for all of Canada, it does not include reports from Quebec due to data access limitations. Emergency department visits with complete diagnostic information was available only for Ontario, Alberta, and the Yukon, with data for other provinces being inputted.
As the report only goes to 2020, the direct impacts of legalization are not fully understood. But the report notes the impacts of various factors, such as changes in Canada's medical cannabis access laws over the 14 period. The proposal made during the 2015 federal election period to legalize cannabis, the impact of COVID-19, as well as the early impacts of introduction of federal cannabis legalization in October of 2018. Now, rates of cannabis use to appear to have increased in 2020, in part due to the COVID-19 pandemic and related policies, which the study also notes may have influenced these trends, further complicating the ability to understand the impact of cannabis legalization has had on those long-term trends.
In 2020, cannabis was responsible for an estimated 5,318 hospitalizations. The overall crude rate of cannabis attributable inpatient hospitalizations increased by 120% between 2007 and 2020. The majority of this increase occurred prior to legalization, so leading up to 2016. Following cannabis legalization, hospitalizations increased from a rate of 12.8 per 100,000 in 2019 to 14 per 100,000 in 2020, which is a 9% increase.
Yeah. The largest percentage increase in crude rates of cannabis crude hospitalizations over the study period occurred among people under the age of 15. Females in this age group saw a 247% increase, while males saw a 220% increase. The crude rate of cannabis treated emergency visits for acute intoxication per 100,000 for people in Canada under the age of 15 was 2.8 to 2.9 in 2020. For those aged 15 to 34, it decreased from 26.9 to 24.9.
Wow. And I still say a lot of this comes from people overconsume. So they think that they're going through whatever when really they just need to drink a bunch of water and go to sleep. For individuals aged 35 to 64, the rate increased from 6.4 to 8.1. And for those over 65, there was a slight increase from 3.0 to 3.5. The total cure rate for all cannabis attributable hospitalizations in Canada, based on available data, was 30.8 in 2018 and 35.8 in 2020.
Rates of emergency department visits due to cannabis use peaked in 2019 among all age groups and then decreased in 2020. For the purpose of comparisons, hospitalization entirely caused by alcohol per 100,000 in 2023-2024 was 271. In 2020, over 62% of the total cost of substance use in Canada was due to alcohol and tobacco. In 2020, healthcare costs attributed to substance use in Canada was $13.4 billion, or 27% of the total cost of SU. I'm not sure what the SU was, I missed that. Or $386 per person in Canada. Alcohol and tobacco contributed to about 87% of those costs.
So glad I don't use either of those substances anymore.
Yeah, same here, exactly. I don't use either one of them, so they're gone. I don't matter. Hello, cannabis. So there you go. We got 11 stories in. We ran a couple minutes long, but we're here.
But we're good. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we're good. We got them all in. Anything else before we say goodbye?
I think that's about it. Have a great weekend, folks.
All right. As Cindy says, that's it. Thanks for watching Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News. Thanks to our buddy, Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, Limestone City, Hydroponics.ca, At-Eze.ca. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching, folks. And as I always say, don't forget to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.